Hello everyone and welcome to issue 82 of Anti-Life Reviews. I am the Tony Mackay, Master of Minds and Men. We're continuing with Darwin Cook month here. Of course we are. It's my channel. I'm going to do what I want. This week we move to one I've not heard too much about, and frankly, one I've never read in the August 2000 publication of DC Comics in Batman Ego. So let's get to it. Before we begin, hit the subscribe button. Just do it. It'll make you feel better. Maybe not, but who really cares how you feel? Writer and artist on this is Darwin Cook, of course, award-winning artist, sometimes writer. A modern-day Will Eisner, in my opinion. The highly talented Mr. Cook worked mostly on DC Comics in his career. We'll be looking at a Marvel work of his this month. He didn't do a ton of work as his art was incredibly time-consuming, but everything he touched was artistic gold. Following his most recent run with the Joker, that left 28 dead, Batman is injured hunting down the Joker's henchman, Buster, that turned on the Crown Prince of Crime and stole a lot of money himself. Batman is injured, tired, and worried he's becoming complacent. Complacent to the atrocities, to the horrors he witnesses. He begins questioning his obsession. He shrugs it off, saying that Gotham is the biggest city in the country, but not big enough to keep criminals safe from him. He tracks down Buster to a bridge where the man climbs up it and jumps off. Though Batman just manages to save him, just barely, even though the Dark Knight is in a world of pain. But he sees the hate in Buster's eyes. Buster says Batman threatened to drop him off a rooftop yesterday. Now he saves him. Make up his mind. He says the Joker knows he ratted him out. He knows he stole the money. They never keep hold of the Joker. You never contain him, he says. He then confessed he killed his family because he couldn't stand to think of them at the hands of that maniac. Then he blows his brains out in front of Batman. After that mess is handled, he goes home. He prays to a portrait of his parents. He tells them his sins. They remain frozen in time, but he imagines they would urge him to heal. He decides after some reflection he can't handle this anymore, the guilt that always eats at him, and that might be the last straw. But of course, in classic Dickens fashion, the ghost of Batman's ego confronts him. The spirit tells Batman it will show him true pain. We get the complete works here, Batman getting shamed, and a visit to a Christmas. Bruce gets a Zorro toy that year, and Martha gets her famous pearls. Some heavy foreshadowing with both of those. Sometime later, Thomas takes Bruce on a house call, not knowing the severity of the medical issue, and Bruce witnesses the man die. They have a difficult conversation on the duality of man, and Thomas makes an unfortunate and understandable promise to not die for a very long time. The ego, fear, the spirit came into Bruce then, and once his parents were murdered, it became a part of his soul, and over time he called the thing Batman. He would take all the pain, all the rage, all the fear he had bottled inside and share it with those who deserved it. We're told they were magnificent then, descending on the city like an unholy instrument of vengeance. We see the opening salvos of Batman's war on crime in all its bloody and brutal ways. Represented with his villains, compelled to rise to the unspoken challenge of the Batman, save one who wanted more. The Joker, killing more than all the others combined. Others killed for power or money. He killed for the grand joke of it all. The Force chokes Bruce under the weight of the scores of victims he could not save, could not help. The Force blames Bruce for creating the Joker, and we see the Alan Moore, the Killing Joke, Red Hood origin here. Thus, it's Bruce's responsibility. It is Batman's responsibility to kill the Joker. But of course, Batman doesn't kill, not even the Joker. The Force tries to drown Bruce in madness, but Bruce admits his madness. He knows he can't stop. He has sworn an oath. But he won't kill. He doesn't care what it tries. So the Force presents Bruce with a gun. The gun Joe Chill used to kill Bruce Wayne's parents. Kill him. Kill the Batman and end it. One bullet from that gun will make you free from the horrible weight of responsibility. Bruce thinks on Buster, the fear he had. Is he there too? Bruce says he won't commit suicide. That's what killing Batman would be. The thing tells Bruce we can't ever be happy. We have no normal life. We lost being a human being a long time ago. And Bruce accepts this. He accepts the Force. Makes a deal. No killing. Bruce says it's the difference between us and them. Our way has to work. It can't be like that. Death can't be the way out. That's their tool. Then yes, Batman is a terrifying symbol, but he's also a symbol of hope to Gotham. Maybe if they can agree on these terms, they can work together till the end. The Thing agrees, and we see Batman later driving on his way to the scene of a crime, assuring Commissioner Gordon he's on his way. Alright, now this was not my original second week of Darwin Cook month, but I had such little content with both volumes of New Frontier, I had to rush to find something, and I'm glad I found this, because I have a lot more to say about this than I thought. The artwork is perfect for this, for the most part. I have one huge complaint, and I'll get into that. It's very dialogue heavy, but the art works as sort of a background narration. Helps move the nature of everything along. It's interesting to use the art like this, as Bruce and the Entity are mostly in the foreground, and there are really some genuinely captivating pieces of art in this. Darwin knocked the essence of the Batman here out of the park, and you can tell he worked on the animated series with Bruce Timm, as it had that 90s, by the way of 30s look to everything that I have some heavy nostalgia for. My one complaint is the entity, the essence, the ego. It looks so much like a mid to late Jim Starlin villain that I've complained about before, being the dark black sort of vague thing with an evil face. Jim used that in Marvel The End, his first and only arc of his run on Thanos, and Death of the New Gods, among others, and I was tired of seeing it in 2000. It gave me PTSD to see it here, and uninspired design. The story, well, I'll get to the obvious out of the way. It's hard not to compare, and I already have, to Dickens' A Christmas Carol, complete with Christmases of the past. It also sort of reminds me of the 11th Doctor story in Doctor Who, Amy's Choice. If you've seen that, the Doctor himself taunts and threatens him and his companions due to a psychic spore creating an evil but ultimately honest version of himself. There are many other things you could compare it to. Those are just two that sparked for me right off the bat. But it's interesting. It was nice to see the deep dive into Batman's psyche in a not so heavy-handed and overly philosophical way. I'm looking at you, Grant Morrison, and while I love what Morrison did, he might have had my favorite run of Batman, honestly. He's always been up his own ass and overly knowledgeable about philosophical ideas, but what we kind of get here was bare bones, but compelling, a take on the same idea. Darwin is hardly that level of writer as Mr. Morrison, but he does a good job here of getting some of the same kind of ideas across. The presentation of Batman as an ethereal force is not a new one. The idea of Batman as an essence, as a force that is quite literally inhabiting Bruce and making him this fear being, has been touched on back, I want to say honestly, back to even the Danny O'Neill and Neil Adams days. That's only vaguely. Really, it was Frank Miller that sort of solidified the idea in The Dark Knight Returns. As a force of nature, and it's been touched on since then, but honestly, I see his feud with the various Green Lanterns as one, since fear, the yellow energy, is the main force they fight against, and the Lanterns seem to have a natural predilection of distaste towards the Dark Knight. Hell, he even gets chosen by the Yellow Ring in Green Lantern 17 from 2007. Strange Brain Parts talked about this in a little more detail in his video he did on The Dark Knight Returns, and I'll link that down below. But I generally have mixed feelings on Batman literally being a force of fear, a power. That's an interesting mythos, but I don't think I've ever totally settled with the idea. I really enjoy seeing the relationship with the Waynes. It had a lot more subtlety than I might have thought. We see them as this very loving family, but there are things that aren't what they seem, of course, as with any family. And nothing here is presented as detrimental. Well, until it was. We see Thomas is a workaholic, and Martha is a bit resentful of this. The way she touches her pearls when he has to go on a house call sort of presented to me the fact that he buys her compliance in a sort of ways. We know Martha has had emotional issues, and there are quick hints of that here. We don't see much with Martha and Bruce. A few very kind glances and moments. But Thomas and Bruce, we see Thomas as an older school kind of man, so he's slightly distant with his son, but he loves him, and he's upset with having to present Bruce with death. I want to talk about myself for a moment. I had originally written in the script Thomas telling his son he won't die for a very long time as an evil promise. I changed that to an unfortunate but understandable one when doing my final script. And I think, being a father, I feel resentful that Thomas lied. He didn't know, but he did. I've had a number of quite serious health issues recently, and I've tried to be transparent with my daughter, but she's 2. So the concepts are beyond her in some ways. I felt resentful for Thomas Wayne at that moment, and the way Bruce feels for so long after his death. I don't want her to feel that way. No child should. I don't want to end on that note. I want to go over a few things quickly. I love the showing of Bruce loving Zorro. For me, that's such a fun part of the relationship. Kid loving a hero. He just wants to live in that fantasy world. And it's been explored by plenty of people. I always go back to Morrison again with his Zorro in Arkham thing. If you don't know, the Waynes famously saw a Zorro movie the night of their death, which one is open to some debate, but it's most famously been Tyrone Power's The Mark of Zorro. The suicide of Buster was heavy and showing some weight here. Pretty shocking to see in what is, kind of moralistic way, but it sure started off with a bang, and it wasn't treated lightly. We see the real fear the Joker puts into people. He made it clear you'd rather murder your family than have him get his hands on them. Very, very scary stuff. Finally, Batman not killing as a huge plot point and the thing that helps him bring the Force under wraps. I love that. Smash kill, Captain America does. He's a soldier, fine, but Batman doesn't. That's part of his character, and that brings the one thing that he won't do. and it makes the Force move. It's something I've always liked. I'm glad it was the catalyst for taming the beast. Overall, I don't really have much to add. I covered everything I had to say. I suppose I absolutely would recommend Batman Ego. Maybe not for the casual comic fan, but for the casual Batman fan, or any Batman fan, really. It's a fun little romp, only being about 70 pages, but it gives you a lot of myth into Batman and a look inside his head. It was better than I expected by like a long shot. Well, that was week 2 of my Darwin Cook month with Batman Ego. What's your favorite story where a character comes to terms with their inner darkness inside? Let me know down below. Also, add me on Instagram for daily Twin Peaks memes. Don't forget to check out my new Patreon. I kind of fix things around. $1 goes a long way in supporting me. Check out my podcast, the Dark Peaks Podcast. Don't forget to do the most important thing, subscribe. Be back next week where I look at a little more Batman, but he's a friend this time, as we go over Batman Spirit. This has been the Tony Makaya, Master of Minds and Men. Thank you very much, and goodbye.